Hi there, Lisa Starr back with you, another episode of StarCast. We are back on the road this week. I am coming to you from Calistoga, California, in the northern Napa Valley. It is the mud bath capital, I think. Every spa and hot springs here has mud baths, but it's quite a center of hot springs, as I mentioned. I'm here for the 7th annual Hot Springs Conference, which is put together by the Hot Springs Association. There are 45 hot springs properties represented here, 17 suppliers from, let me see how many states, 21 states and 2 countries. There are about 125 people here altogether. It's a mixture of lectures from experts on everything from marketing to geology, because that's an important part if you're running a hot springs. You need to know a lot about geology and mineral waters. And there are people here who run resorts with overnight lodging, without, just day passes, a really interesting combination and very, very good programming. There are tours of the local spas, people taking mud baths, lots of networking opportunities. So it's been a really great event. I have interviewed a few of the key people in the hot springs industry, which you will hear from in this episode. So I hope you enjoy it, and thanks for joining. So now I'm with Vicki Nash, and it's very important that we talk to Vicki because the Hot Springs Association and Connection Conference is all due to Vicki. Vicki is a tourism expert and had a communications company, and was Glenwood Hot Springs was her client. When was that?
Well, to back up just slightly, in 1995, I moved to Glenwood Springs, Colorado, which is famous for our geothermal waters. And I was hired by the Chamber of Resort Association to be the tourism marketing director. So that was really the beginning of my strong relationships with hot springs, because we have 3 different hot springs resorts in our town. So that evolved into, fast forward, I started my own company in 2001, and that's called Resort Trends Inc. And strictly started out doing public relations. And my very first client was Glenwood Hot Springs.
And because you could see that resorts were going to be a thing
Yeah.
there.
Oh, absolutely.
So that was 2001?
When I started that for, yes. Yeah.
And so let's flash forward to, I guess, the aughts. Like, when did you decide, wait, the hot springs is really something that's growing?
Yeah. Well, in Colorado, we have over 30 commercial hot springs properties, and especially in the western part of the state where Glenwood Springs is, where I was based. So, our state tourism office, the Colorado Tourism Office, had a marketing matching grant program available to the destination marketing organizations. So, several of us, like Pagosa Springs, Ouray, Steamboat Springs, Buena Vista area, all were promoting their geothermal properties, and wellness really wasn't kind of the key word at that point. But we thought, we should get together with all of our visitor bureaus and get some of that marketing funding and promote our hot springs specifically. So that was the beginning of the Colorado Historic Hot Springs Loop. So initially it was 5 destinations. They pulled in $5,000 each. It was a minimal amount of money, and then it was a one-to-one match with our state tourism office fund.
Oh,
So
that
we
was
had
clever. So
we
there were
had
5 to begin with?
exactly, and we had a whopping $50,000 to start our campaign, which is pretty small, but it made a huge impact because we focused on public relations activities, got international media involved. The very first year, we had coverage in Sunset Magazine, New York Times, Chicago Tribune. We were getting great media coverage that resulted in about $6 million in media equivalency. So
Well, that's
right
a pretty
away,
good
right away.
investment out of
And it was
50,000.
literally an itinerary that people could say, "Oh, well, we're gonna go to Steamboat Springs. We could just do this little part of this loop around the state and visit all these different properties."
Yep.
So it was very, very successful.
So how many are on the loop now?
They've expanded, and now it's 8 different destinations because there's some renovated properties that we've added. Durango is a new area that we've added. And let's see, how many are there? I think there's like 26 different hot springs properties on it now. And so it's still operating. That began in 2015, and now it's still evolving into different
So,
aspects.
at what point did the Hot Springs Association get formed and how did that happen?
Well, because of that successful marketing campaign, I always thought, why don't there's no website anywhere that has all the hot springs properties and
Takes a
resorts.
marketing
I
person to put it all
know. Yeah,
together.
exactly. Exactly. So I thought, and like I literally just created my own database. I researched, I found who the owners were, big, small, and I identified about 250 different hot springs resorts across the United States. And that's literally how I started. And I just emailed them. So
You said,
some of them answered, some of them I said, "Who are you?" And so I got a pretty good response. So I thought, well, we should just try doing a conference just as a test to see how much interest or engage. If they want to work together, if they have common issues they want to start discussing, networking, and the first conference then was in Glenwood Springs, my hometown, in 2018, and we had 90 some
and
participants.
what year was it?
2018.
Oh, not
So
that long
that
ago.
so we kind of started backwards. So I started the conference first, got a lot of interest all over the country, and then several of the properties said, we need a trade association to really, make this a cohesive, legitimate organization. So it kind of shifted from the conference, and probably by year 3, it was then a full-fledged trade
That
association.
makes perfect sense, though, as a way in to have a conference first, gauge the interest, the committedness of the people who come, and then build an
Yeah,
association.
so that's exactly what happened.
So, how many people are members of the Hot Springs Association now?
There's about 90 different properties, and we're international now. We have some in Canada, Patagonia. So we're really starting to get some international reach. And we've created some fun programs for our members. We like to do field trips, and we've taken a group of 25 operators to Australia and New Zealand, and toured a lot of Charles Davidson's properties, Peninsula, that's very famous, and a lot of the hot springs that he's involved with, and also in New Zealand. So we're going to Iceland in September with another 25. So we're trying to now expand into different things like that. And I really would like to see it go more of an international program.
So, how can anyone listening help promote the Hot Springs Association and conference? I mean, obviously, joining if you are a hot spring.
Mhm.
Do you have to be an artisanal hot spring? I mean, let's talk about what qualifies someone as a hot spring.
Yeah. We don't have any specific guidelines as far as that goes, because the new trend now really is replicating different mineral waters. World Springs is a perfect example where they'll take the mineral content, for instance, from a hot spring in Rotorua, New Zealand, and they'll replicate that mineral content in the pools. And then they'll have Japan next door to that pool. So that's not literally geothermal water from that site, but the other side of the resort has it in Iron Mountain Hot Springs. So we don't have a lot of guidelines. It's really, we have small mom and pop typical organizations all the way up to the largest hot springs pool in the world, which is Glenwood Hot Springs, and everything in between. So there's not many specific guidelines. And the group itself is working on classifying the waters, like, is your water artesian? Is it a well? And things like that. So we're working toward that.
Is there any talk about classification of the minerality of the water, location? Like, I know I've been in China, they have a hot springs association that knows the minerality of every spring and tells the consumer where to go for certain ailments, like almost like medicine. I mean, how I'm sure we're not there, but do you see that as something you might develop at some
Yes,
point?
and we have a very close relationship with the Balneology Association, which is short acronym BANA, and that's exactly what we would like to have this consistency where if your resort is high in sulfur, what does that do for you if you soak in high concentrations of sulfur? Good for your skin. So we're really trying to get a consistent verbiage to describe exactly what each of the mineral components will do for you health wise.
Putting together a conference is a lot of work. And you've had a great array of speakers from people who are, so much science this morning.
Yeah.
Geophysicists and talking about fissures and temperatures and pumping and drilling. These are things that in the spa industry we don't need to talk about. We just build a building. And then you've got a lot of family owned businesses here, people that have been in business for 30, 40
Mhm.
years, and you've got people buying new resorts. So it seems like there's a lot of energy around the industry. How do you decide what content to put out at the conference?
We really pull the members and just say, hey, what are you having challenges with? And people do have to drill for a new well sometimes, and it's extremely expensive. So you want to make sure you're using your dollars effectively. So that's what a lot of the speakers were discussing this morning. And just the wellness component, it's such a big trend that having now a cold plunge, everybody's putting in cold plunges. And they're historically, these in the United States, these properties have been around since the late 1800s. So some of them are a little derelict when they're being purchased, and then they're completely transformed. So that's been great to see that. And then they can now say, oh, how did you go about taking this old bathhouse and trying to preserve its character? But yeah, you want to have the modern conveniences, obviously, but you still want to have that flavor of the
Sure.
historic connection.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, people do want that, but they also want things to work and
yes,
be able to navigate it.
exactly.
Well, Vicky Nash, we should call you the godmother of hot springs in the United States.
Well, thank you. What an honor.
Thank you for doing all of this and for joining us here.
Thank you, Lisa.
So now we're here with Jordan Menzel from Maple Grove Hot Springs.
Yeah, just
And what's the town? I can't
well,
remember.
Maple Grove Hot Springs is in the Mountain West, just between Salt Lake City and Jackson Hole. So if you're driving, it's right at the Utah-Idaho border along the Bear River.
So, Jordan, you are not a hot springs lifelong person. You're a real estate guy.
Well, I'm a obsessive hot springer who's had lots of different, professional journeys in international development and the software world, but hot springs has been a thread of just being a guest and a customer my whole life.
So, tell us, how did that start? Because that's not usual for an international development person and a software guy to be into hot springs.
Yeah. Well, what I love about hot springs is you never know in a pool the makeup. You have big city, small town individuals, conservative, progressive, all economic walks of life. And I very much fit into that. So I've always hit hot springs in or tried to sneak them in into most travels. But in my work in international development, I used to take a lot of groups abroad and notice that when folks were in a new kind of culturally rich, different environment, they would be really open to kind of reflect on their own life and their purpose and what was working for them. And so after working in that field a lot, I felt really curious about what could a hospitality or a retreat-based project in the Mountain West look like that could maybe help people through travel kind of reconnect to who they are and what is and isn't working for them. And so that set me on a path of looking around for places that might be conducive to that. And that's when I stumbled upon Maple Grove Hot Spring just before it closed for business after falling into an abandoned state of disrepair.
How did you find it?
Well, as a hot springs enthusiast, I always have a little list of hot springs to hit, and I'm always collecting them from friends or travelers. And someone had just told me about this little place that was only 2 hours from Salt Lake City, where I'm from originally. And I thought, how have I never heard of this? That's what I love about hot springs. This day and age, you can still be surprised to find, an old place. And so it was just on a list. And on a family trip, I said, hey, on the way back, how about we go check this out? Yep.
So, you checked it out and it was for sale?
It was not for sale. It is a 60-acre parcel on the Bear River that's really surrounded by a few ranches, but mostly national forest land. And it had been a homestead originally, and before that, an old Shoshone winter camp. And beginning in the 80s and 90s, it had a few versions of development and commercial operation with one thread. It had always closed in some foreclosure or some crisis. It's fully off grid from a power perspective. So it's not a easy endeavor, certainly in the earlier years. And I visited it as a guest. And this might tell you something. It was a beautiful fall Sunday, and myself and my girlfriend were the only people there. That's because the whole space was, it turns out, just a week away or 2 weeks away from closing for business. The roof had collapsed. There was no fresh water. Power had ceased to work.
That's a problem. Yep.
Yep. However, you could still sit in a pool on the shores of the Bear River where people had probably been soaking in mineral water for literally hundreds, if not thousands of years. And that natural environment was, even in that state of garbage and equipment and inoperability, I had one of the most kind of transformative few hours. And so I was just deeply curious about what really was a sad state of a real public treasure. And once it closed for business, that's, curiosity can often send people on all sorts of crazy journeys. And it led to trying to figure out how the community could kind of restore this place to be used and maybe break that cycle of
Well,
constant closure.
you must be an adventurous person to take that on in the state it was in. That's a big commitment.
Yeah, delusional is kind of the word I use. Yeah, you never know. What I love about hot springs, you sort of never know what's under the water, right? Or the journey it's going on. Every hot spring source is often like thousands of years in the making and some unknowable journey underground. And yeah, I think most folks who try and understand and restore an old space learn pretty quickly that it's an unpredictable journey. So we learned that banks wouldn't finance it. We learned that it was, from an infrastructure standpoint, everything we couldn't see was worse than maybe the stuff we even could. And so it did require a lot of hustle and heart and honestly a whole community of guests. We say that this is a place that has really been built by guests for guests, and we've used guests to help finance the project through customer loan
But
programs.
how did you find guests when you weren't open?
It had a history of enthusiastic people who had gone to the property over years, and then it would have states of closure and foreclosure. And so there were a few people out there. And once it closed for business, we worked hard to get started and let everyone know we could, that we were going to try and take a community driven approach. I don't come from wealth. I had saved up every little bit I could and really leveraged anything else I had. And it really needed peers, friends, community members to sort of partner up with us. And so we included really early on residents, neighbors, friends. I enrolled, everyone, including my family and cats and dogs. And we all parked it up there and would really work on volunteer weekends of kind of a hot springs festival where we would cook and eat together and tackle projects. And so we did a primary restoration in 6 months. It was largely fueled by friends and family. And that helped people get excited about
What it could be.
what it could be. Because what we knew was that what had been happening there clearly had not broken a cycle of foreclosure. So we knew that something needed to change. And that's why it felt really clear that that initial intention of how can people from all walks of life come to a place of in a natural setting and do what people have done for, like I said, hundreds of years,
Hey,
connect,
sit in the water.
learn, grow. And so we actually say that we're a retreat center for individual and community growth that happens to have hot springs. And we say that with intention because that informs our programming, what we build on the land, what we don't build on the land. And it also really informs the social agreements that guests can expect when they come on site that are all designed to enhance that, almost mirror that afternoon I had when I was the only guest there. It was peaceful. It was quiet. There was no cell phone service. We offer a Wi-Fi free experience. And we've learned that add that all up, it is really possible for people to roll in from a hasty life, spend a few hours And the way we think about it is when you pass through here and you rub shoulders with other guests, could it be that you feel a little bit more grounded and confident to tackle whatever the next day in your life requires through your work, your family, your own mental health journey? And that's sort of our North Star, and it informs really everything we do.
So, how far into the project are you? How many
Yeah,
years
it's a
in?
great, we're 7 years now,
7 years.
which is wild. And every year, like I said, we've really been just a family and community driven business. So we've slowly improved the infrastructure and the ability for folks to have a really special, architecturally forward experience in this natural setting. And we're prepping for what I consider are really our final frontier, which is about 60 folks can stay overnight. We host folks who come and soak for the day. We produce a lot of workshops, events, and retreats. And the final teaching opportunity for us is to really weave farming and food into that closed system because we're fully off grid. All of our systems come from these 60-acre resources, including power, water, all of the unseen components to host people overnight. And we will be able to produce a significant amount of the food that can also be a part of that experience. And one thing we love is if we're going to do something, we want guests to be able to learn from it. So everything we've built has usually been built with guest facing workshops as well. And so if we're going to do farming, we want guests to be able to take regular workshops to learn about their own canning, their own growing. And the hope is that you can come and find things that make sense to take back to your life, your own garden, your own dining experience, maybe your own wellness backyard, etc.
Tell me about the lodging situation, Jordan. It's not that you have a hotel there.
Yeah, we call it a retreat center, which means everything's designed to be an experience. I like to use the idea that luxury is rarely life changing. Leisure is rarely life changing. New experiences that pull you into new environments, whether we have spaces called stone shelters that are individual stone and timber retreat spaces. On the more comfortable side, we have forest yurts, we have some old historic cabins, we have camping, and that lets us ensure that we have guests who might be high net worth individuals at the same time as a minimum wage grocery store worker camping, all staying overnight for maybe a few nights. All the layers come off and they're sitting in the same pools having a conversation that really breaks down these normal barriers of class, ethnicity, race, gender, even. And I think society needs more of that, not less. And so we do view a problem in the wellness industry that it's oriented for the wellness problems of the wealthy. And it's our view that if my own friends can't afford to stay here, we're doing something wrong. And if my own friends can't make a living working here, we're still doing something wrong. So this model of having something for different socioeconomic classes and ensuring that everyone's in a shared guest experience, to me, is a really magical thing to see in action. So all of our accommodations are designed to have some options and access points for everybody.
What an amazing thing you've created. Let me ask you, Jordan, is it making money? Is it well
Yeah,
managing?
this is what's so great, and I often love to evangelize as much as I can that as an organization, if you focus on purpose first and stick to that, profitability is usually baked in from the beginning, which means we have been profitable since we opened. We've used all of those profits to date to build our own infrastructure, which means we aren't pressured by outside investment. We aren't prodded by to pivot when markets change and flow. And it means we can be really consistent. And we invest that back into our team by meeting far and above living wage standards, certainly in Idaho. And that means our team has a very long permanence with us, and guests see and interact with that, and so that cycle is allowed us to really create sustainability for the org.
Well, kudos to you, Jordan Menzel, for creating this, like with the vision and energy, and the future is bright.
I think so. We're also having a lot of fun, and so hot springs blur the line between work, fun, purpose, meaning, and even personal wellness. So yeah.
Well, great. Thank you for sharing your story.
Okay, you bet.
So I'm here now with Bryn Foster, who is a food systems expert, and she is from Hawaii, but she's here representing BANA, which is the Balneology Association of North America. So I'm going to ask Bryn first about her day job, and then we'll talk about BANA and what BANA does.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here. I'm a food systems entrepreneur and I'm also a holistic health coach. The two correlate. I'm very focused and passionate about well being, and that involves land, food, and our reconnection to these important sources of life.
So how did you get involved with BANA and which, as I said, Balneology Association of North America? And for those of you that don't know, balneology means bathing, all things water.
Yeah, it also is the taking of the water, the soaking, the drinking, the vapor, the mud use. It's the therapeutic use of taking in the waters, which has been going on for thousands of years, from Egypt to, all over Europe and Japan. So we're really the bridge between the European study and bringing it to North America.
Which was needed. I mean, as we've talked several times in the conference about how bathing is prevalent in many cultures globally, but not as much in America. And of course, we had baths, we have hot springs towns sprinkled around North America, but people didn't go to them frequently or haven't frequented them, I should say, in the last 100 years. And now they're becoming popular again. So it is a perfect time to have an association. Tell us how you work with the Hot Springs Association. Like, what is that relationship like?
Well, we're all in this, we're nonprofits. And so we are really just advocating for taking in the mineral waters and the health benefits, and then also just supporting this as not only an industry, but something to, a traditional use to bring back this practice, and how we can support, stewards, how we can support this. And, really it's a First Nations practice that the First Nations have been, we hear stories all the time, the Native community were using these waters for healing, or you hear about some of the pioneers that came and they founded, they came to have a town like Calistoga. There's other stories about people just getting reconnected to the waters of different lands. And I think we're just, that it's the time that we're reconnecting to a lot of the past and some of the good parts of the past, especially with traditional water use. And and that's really what BANA is. It's the therapeutic focus on that use. And with the Hot Springs Association, we're just grateful to be connected to them. I think there's going to be a lot more collaborations in the near future. And I think that's the project that we're working on.
Mhm. So let's talk about the work of BANA because it's an association you belong to and a nonprofit, as you said. But what is the mandate of BANA and some of the work that you're doing?
We're doing, as a group, so many amazing things. I'm excited to join this group. They've been working for many years on a lot of studies. There's a lot of therapeutic studies. So that's really what, we want to be able to offer the resorts and spa stewards, that they can go to BANA to be able to cite research on therapeutic use. They've done a lot of work in many different areas. So if you look at our website, we'll have the pillars that we work within. We're a great resource. So come to us for what you need. And if we don't have it, then we'll be able to refer you to all the other great organizations. Right now, we're really working on water registry and how we can pair that with a certification course that involves how to talk about the mineral water, how to, for the protocols, also what does balneology mean. So there's just basic language framework. And one of the things we're excited about is reframing it, not just speaking about minerals, because a lot of people are saying, well, what does that mineral do for you? And we're not asking, we don't want to have resorts and spa destinations become medical clinics. We want to be able to say, go to Bana for your research, and we can be able to cite those to be able to, show you where to cite those studies. And so, yeah, our certification course is something we're working on right now that we're really excited about to be able to give to as a resource to resorts.
Can you elaborate, Bryn, on the water registry and what's involved in that, and what's the point of having a water registry?
Yeah, a water registry is a test of your water. So either you have a test as a resort, and then you can send it to Bana, and we can decipher it for you. Or we also have a testing site that we can send your water sample to, and then we go and test it. And it's really a footprint. It's a place based blueprint of being able to just talk about your site specifically. There can be, a sites nearby that have completely different compositions. And so for you, it's really your footprint. And then we take that water registry, and then we're able to create a framework around that with this certification program that shows you how to talk about it, how to share the information that you've just been given.
So the certification program isn't sort of government licensing. It's more within Bana to sort of show a consumer that you know and understand the qualities of your water.
Yeah, it's also a way to be able to get on board with languaging. There's a lot of language. There's a lot of health benefits that are historically we know a lot about. There's a lot of medicinal water as medicine, and the history that is there. And so we're able to be able to we want to help create a framework so that there's a unified voice in this languaging. There's a lot of things with health savings accounts that has the ability to maybe have some insurance or health savings accounts be part of the more access and availability to be able to take the waters for medicinal usage, for therapeutic use. So that's something we're really excited about, helping create the pathways, which is, first we have to make sure that the language is sort of, not standardized, but let's use some of this pathway language that doctors are using for chronic health issues, language that's used for health savings accounts, and let's just get on board with those, what those words are, what they mean, and how they apply to your specific resort. And that really pairs well with the water registry, because if we're talking about sleep, which is a pillar with lifestyle medicine, if we're talking about stress management, these minerals are part of a protocol that can help with sleep and stress management. And these are, chronic health issues that are plaguing the United States. And if we can have alternative methods to be able to help people manage these conditions or help get some relief, then that's really the goal of this certification program. It's really creating a pathway for language that's frameworked in a way that can help physicians understand what we're doing or what the resorts are doing, and soakers be able to say, oh, I'd love to just maybe take the edge off of this stressful week and go soak in the mineral springs. Like, wouldn't that be lovely?
And wouldn't it be great to know that the waters maybe where you live, have benefits that you're looking for, but we're not aware of that now. They're really not marketed now towards their minerality. It's more just, we have springs, come bathe. But it would be nice to know more about the water that you were soaking in. I'm assuming that, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, you don't have to be a hot spring to be in Bana.
I think there's a long history of this conversations. That's why we want to have a certification course. There's mineral springs, there's hot springs, there's a lot of different layers to soaking and bathing. And so that's something I think, we get into with this certification course, because there's a lot of questions. And yeah, so I think that's join our course.
Are there ways a listener could help contribute or bring money to Bana?
Absolutely. You can go to our website. We're also not only wanting to help with the language and education for resorts or stewards of destination spas, but also we have outreach for social connectedness, which is part of the pillars of lifestyle medicine. We identify that that is healing for chronic health issues. And so we're creating something called Bana Soaks. And so you can join our Instagram and there's ways of donating there, but also participating. We just, we really like participation. Reach out to us, join some of our meetups where we're going to be at different springs. And part of this too is like, let's be good stewards of these waters. It's not just, let's go and traipse through to find where these waters are, but like how can we be a good hot springer? How can we, there's a lot of different layers to that. Coming from Hawaii, we have protocols set up where when we visit a rainforest, when we visit in the mountains, there's a way of like wiping your shoes off so that you're not bringing anything up to the forest where it's protected. There's a way of we are trained as children now in Hawaii is what sunscreen are you using because that could kill off some marine life and algae. You don't go step and walk all over the rocks because we know that there's small marine animals there. So there's a lot of that's I think we would love to be able to put into this course. I mean, of course, we're not going to say you're certified now to use this, but how do we become good stewards of the area that we're visiting and knowing we're a visitor there, that we just don't traipse around and it's something that we want to care for. So
Well, that seems like great work and a valuable association for people to belong to and know about. So thank you for your work, Bryn Foster, and thank you for joining us.
thanks for having me.
So now we're here with Angela Keyes. Many of you in the wellness industry know Angela because she's been a spa director for years. But for the last 2.5 years, you've been at Murrieta Hot Springs, which is a new resort in Murrieta, California, owned by the company that owns Pagosa as well.
Yes.
And so, Angie, I thought it would be interesting to talk about, since you come from spa, what's different about running a hot springs than a spa location?
Yeah, I had the pleasure of starting working with David Droney, who pulled me into the project mostly just because of my passion for wellness. But I didn't know anything about hot springs, geothermal water. And that was where I got the pleasure of meeting Dr. Marcus Copland, who's part of the BANA organization, which really teaches people how to use water not only as a resource for businesses, but also as medicine. And so Dr. Copland introduced me to the concept of temperature being able to be programmed. And now coming from the spa world, it had always been about spa services, right? What's your spa menu? What kind of amenities do you have? Do you put eucalyptus in your steam room? What are you using? And that was really our world and how we programmed it. But adding geothermal water and then temperature gradients, it changed from the water being an amenity to the water being able to be part of the programming.
Interesting.
And that was a huge shift in how I approached all things, related to both spa and just the overall experience, because now I could program the entire environment rather than just a spa menu.
So, is Murrieta a true hot spring? Are you located on a spring?
Yes.
And how are you able to change the temperature of the water?
So we have 4 wells that we draw from. That the wells are, you can visit them. They're right on the property. You can see them. And so what happens is we have these 4 wells and it's all drawn into a tank that then pushes the water up the hillside, and we have just these open reservoirs because when it comes up, it's coming up at about 140, 150 degrees. And so we have to cool it because we can't pump that directly into the pools. That's too
Be a
hot.
little too hot,
That would be too hot.
even for me.
So we have these 2 reservoirs that are aerating the water, and from there, it's all digitized. It pulls the water into this reservoir at a lower temperature, and then that is kept at a certain temperature. So it's going to pull water based on how it needs to adjust. And from there, it goes into the pools. And so what we've done is we've been able to get permitting as this flow through design, which means that we don't have to treat the water. It's not recirculated. It flows into the pools and it flows out. So we have a variety of temperatures. And the way we manage this is by flow. The stronger the flow, the hotter the pool. And the lower the flow, the cooler the pool, right? But also there's bathing load. There's so many things that go into managing the temperatures. Murrieta can get in the hundreds. And so that is also going to play a role in how fast the water cools. So there is definitely an art to managing flow, which can help manage temps.
Boy, these were all things you didn't know in your previous
No,
spa
I didn't
director
know, and
role.
it's so exciting.
Yeah.
And it's the thing I love too is I find that many of us in the spa world, we're drawn into this because we believe in natural healing.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to learn not only about temperatures and how they stimulate the healing process in the body, but to be able to use such a natural source as the water, to not have to treat it, to learn about all of the benefits, not only of the thermal aspect, but the minerality. And even the pressure of the water is very healing and induces the parasympathetic state. So being able to learn all these things has really enhanced the overall wellness and spa experience. And even if you don't have access to geothermal water, you can still use temperature, you can still use pressure, you can still use contrast as a therapy for whomever's visiting your property. It's incredible.
Do your guests ask you about the minerality of the water?
We try to make them curious. Southern California, everyone knows spa. And not everyone, though, knows geothermal. And so sometimes people come in and they think they're coming to a traditional spa. They don't even realize we have geothermal water. And that's where the environment plays a role because when you have educational elements perfectly placed, then it starts stimulating questions they didn't even know they had. So for people who then come in and don't know anything about the waters, that's where we have strategically placed wellness instructors that can then take the people who have curiosities, or maybe even those that don't, that are just there with friends, to bring them in and have a felt experience together. Because sure, anyone can read words on a page or on a sign, but when you're actually soaking in the water with a professional who can speak to what they're feeling while they're feeling it, it might just be a 20-minute experience, but it takes that to the next level where now they begin to feel what you're saying, and that builds trust and confidence in the brand, and then they want to go deeper. And that's where they start to then go into deeper experiences. And then they become hot springs enthusiasts because they felt the benefits and you helped guide them there. It wasn't just left to them.
So you're putting information around the property to pique their curiosity.
Yes.
And are there still people that come that don't even realize it's geothermal? And they still have a good time.
And they still have a good time. They still have a good time because really, wellness can manifest in so many different ways. And sometimes just sitting by the pool, regardless of what's in that pool, is all someone needs to really unplug. And maybe on a next visit, they'll be ready to learn a little bit more. But on that first visit, they just needed to unplug, and that's okay.
So tell us a little bit about the makeup of the complex. Like, what do you have in terms of traditional spa and versus your pool setups?
I feel nothing about what we're doing is truly traditional. One of the things that I love that I know many spa directors probably have a similar challenge is, a lot of the spa experience is based on amenities in locker rooms. And especially now where gender identity can be very fluid and where couples want to spend time together. And if the couples are of opposite genders, they really can't, So the way everything is designed right from the beginning is no one has to go through a locker room to access the facility. There are locker rooms, but they're more peripheral. They're not a key part of the experience, which is different. And it makes it a lot easier because they don't have as big of a footprint.
So what, you come to the check-in desk and then you just go to the pool?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you can completely bypass locker rooms and go to the pool. And our overnight guests, they have 24-hour access to the pools. They don't have to go through the bathhouse where the locker rooms are at all. They can just go from
So I can
their
swim at
rooms.
2 a.m. if I want?
2 a.m.
And how many pools are there?
Well, it depends on what kind of guest you are because there's several geothermal pools. I think right now we have 28 geothermal pools, which they vary in size that you would have access to 24 hours. But there's other pools that we have that are regular municipal water that some of our bigger pools that according to Department of Health guidelines, of course, we have to treat and things, but all of our geothermal pools are untreated. So that's the difference. And so, depending on are you here for the day? Are you here overnight? It's going to determine how many pools you have access to. So everyone can go in through the math hall. They can visit the locker room or not. It makes it easy to have a universal locker space because they don't have as big of a footprint. You're not outfitting them with steam rooms and saunas. So the locker room is easy now. And you go out.
It's gender fluid.
Well, there's three. There's three. So we have a female locker, a male locker, and a universal locker. But truly all it has is lockers, restrooms, and showers.
Changing cubbies or?
Not yet. I think that was something that was missed with our architect that we're working on now correcting, is the changing cubbies. But primarily, we want to get people out of the locker room and into the space, right?
Yeah, it's all about that, not
Yes,
sitting in the
yes.
locker room.
Whereas, well, I think though with traditional spas, a lot of the experience happened in the locker rooms, right? And so that is one of the big shifts. And now with steam room and sauna, all of that is external to the locker room. It's more social, it's more communal, it's universal, and it's just really changed the dynamic of how people use the facility. And then for spa services, which we're used to, the locker rooms, they have the amenities, and then you go to the lounge that then takes you to the treatment rooms. Well, our treatment rooms are just a separate building. There is no locker room to go through to get to the treatment rooms. It's just part of the campus where when it's time for your service, you would go over to that building where all of the amenities you're enjoying are outside of that building. And, we do have a special geothermal area just for spa guests. But again, it's outside, it's open air. There's nothing that is in a closed space other than the treatment rooms themselves.
And how many of those are there? How many treatment?
We have 14 treatment rooms, yes. We have one of our buildings that has been tagged for future guest rooms that I think could be our expansion for treatment rooms rather than guest rooms, but we'll see.
What's the most in-demand service you're seeing per guest?
As I think is pretty standard, the therapeutic massage, any kind of massage. We have been able to incorporate our geothermal water into some of the services, which is nice. But we've seen the same mix that I've seen in traditional spas where 85% of the business is some form of massage. And then you have body treatments and facials making up the remaining 15%. Our facials and body treatments are pretty equal.
Yeah. Oh, good to hear.
Yeah.
So do guests come for the day or do they all stay overnight?
Primarily for the day. We might see 500 to 600 people come through for a day pass, on a
5
busy
to
week.
600 on a weekend day.
Yeah, on a
That's
Saturday.
a lot of people.
500 to 600 people. Yeah. And then we have 150 guest rooms. And of course, on the weekends, we'll be sold out. And those rooms could have 2-person occupancy up to 4 people. But usually midweek, just like any resort, that's where we're looking to fill with groups and things. But yeah, weekends, we might have throughout the day, over 1,000 people on property all using the water.
So let's say you have 500 people on property and you have a mix of day guests and overnight guests. How many of them are having spa treatments?
We, on a busy day with 14 treatment rooms, we're still ramping up a little with our therapists. We were going to probably do between 100 and 120 treatments on that day. And so when you consider that we may have 300 hotel guests, 500 to 600 day pass guests, it is a smaller percentage than, of course, what any spa would like. But that is more limited, I think, to everyone wanting to come on a Saturday, right? Where I feel that's the common problem that we have in spas is we, staff on Saturday, we're maxed out and everybody wants to come on Saturday. And so what we're trying to solve is how do we encourage bookings on other days and start to fill up? Because still our Sunday afternoons, as I find most spas find, right? That 5 o'clock Sunday appointment isn't as popular as the 10 a.m. Saturday.
So are you experimenting with some rate fluidity to see if
We're
that drives?
We're starting to entertain that conversation because part of our pricing formula is with day passes. We have some, variety in prices, but we haven't had that with our spa pricing. And our day pass is included with a spa service. So that's where I think we're a little stuck is we don't change the pricing of our spa, but our day passes do change. So it's a better value on a Saturday because our day pass price is higher on a Saturday. And so
You're
that's the
driving the
next piece,
problem.
right?
So,
We are contributing to our own problem. So now we're thrilled that we have a new director of marketing who has a lot of experiencing with the fine tuning of the pricing models. And so she and I are doing some work together to see how we can make it easy for the guest where there's clarity. Because sometimes, that's a big piece is they just want to know how much it is. So when things change too much, it can be a little confusing, but trying to transition our guests into a more dynamic pricing model.
so Angie, what was the biggest thing you've learned in a hot spring setting that you weren't aware of before you went into this position?
How much the amenities can drive visitation. I think coming from, I was a massage therapist before a spa operator. And for me, everything, my whole focus was about the treatment and that the treatment is what is driving visitation. And I think the biggest shift I've had is that the treatment enhances visitation. Now it is a part of a bigger picture, and that is one of the things I learned is how do you make the entire experience something that people can get therapeutic value from and not just the service.
Well, that sounds like an expansion of wellness, which is what we're all about.
Yeah. It's so exciting and I love it and happy to share with anyone who wants to learn more about, learning how to program the water and just using temperature gradients as a starting
Yeah,
point.
that's fascinating. Well, thank you, Angela Kais, for joining us. You can find her on LinkedIn at Murrieta Hot Springs, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm here with Joe Salisbury, the owner of Veo Pool Resort, which is where, Joe?
Southern Utah.
Southern Utah. So how many times have you been to this conference?
This is probably my 4th year.
Uh-huh. And when did you get into the Pool Springs business?
It's been just over 8 years ago. I bought this property with my wife.
Why? What made you do it?
My main business is land development and home building. And I stumbled across this property, and it's a private canyon that's a little oasis. It's got waterfalls coming down and it's plush green in the middle of the desolate desert in southern Utah.
So you
So
live in Utah?
I live in
And
Utah.
so you're like out driving around and you find this property?
I live in northern Utah, but I recreate down in southern Utah a lot. And there's a famous pie shop in the little town of Veo, 300 people, 385 people. And I love pie. And so,
Who doesn't love pie?
and so since I frequent southern Utah to recreate so much, mountaineering, canyoneering, motorcycles, four-wheelers, mountain biking, we do all that. But being down there so often, I had a friend say, "Hey, have you ever been to Veo Pies?" And I never even heard of Veo. So my ears perked up because I love pie. So I said, "No, tell me more." And he tells me about this really famous pie shop in this little town. So every time that I went there after hearing that, every time I went to southern Utah, we always went to go get pie. And one day, driving back towards the main town from this little town of Veo, I saw a sign on the side of the road that said Veo Pool Resort. And I thought, what the heck?
What is
This
that?
really old sign on an old rock kind of out by the highway. So I veered off, slammed on the brakes and veered off and meandered back. And I really thought I was going to end up seeing an old pool
Uh-huh.
full of mud and
Right.
cattails that was just abandoned. But it took me down into this private canyon that was plush and green with, like I said, waterfalls and a river cutting through it. And it was the most incredible thing. So parked my car and walked towards the entrance. And there's an old man curled up on a chair smoking a cigarette. And I said, "What is this place?" And he said, "It's for sale. You want to buy it?" Well, he said, "It's for sale. That's what it is. You want to buy it?" So I said, "Yeah, I do." He goes, "Really?" And I was being facetious, of course, but then he went and got his wife and she gave me a tour and I couldn't believe the
That's
property.
amazing.
It was the most incredible property. So being a land guy
Right.
in land development, I knew this was a special property. So I figured it out and ended up buying it
And that was how many years ago?
8 years ago.
8 years ago. But you didn't know anything about running a pool resort.
Knew nothing. I'm land development, home building, like I said, so I had no business getting into the hospitality hot spring business. Yeah.
So how's it been?
It's been an adventure. I'll tell you that. It's been fun, but that's why I'm so grateful for the Hot Spring Association, and I come every year because I learn so much from these folks that have already been doing it. And as I've learned, no hot spring resort is the same, and we're all kind of charting our own path and figuring it out based on local regulations or the different types of water. And so it's been good to have a group of people that can help me understand what's going on and help me navigate through it.
So what's unique about Vail Pool Resort?
Mostly the location, like I've said, being in it feels like Hawaii in the desert. A lot of people call it Hawaii in the desert. So we are 15 degrees cooler down in the canyon than the local St. George. So when it's 105, we're 90. It's a much more
That's a
desirable.
livable difference.
And there's usually a breeze coming off the river down in the canyon, so it feels even cooler than that. And then we've got this. Ours is actually a warm spring, and the water is an artesian spring that just naturally flows directly. The water flows out of the earth right into this pool, and it's only 84 degrees. But the spring has been kind of petering out because of all the droughts. So we were able to secure a new water right, and we recently, just last year, drilled a new well, and we're pulling water up at 96 degrees. So a lot more,
Oh,
a lot hotter, and a lot more comfortable in colder temperatures.
so where do your guests come from?
All over the nation,
Really?
all over the world. Actually, we have one other unique thing about our canyon is we have the only outdoor rock climbing park in the state of Utah, and actually one of the only outdoor rock climbing parks in the world. Sorry, at least in the nation, but yes, actually the world too. But we've got 234 bolted rock climbing routes all up and down this over mile stretch of river.
And you have lodging as well?
We at this point we have just 31 campsites down in the canyon.
Okay.
We have a little RV area and one guest house.
This is perfect for those who like outdoor adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when will the new well be giving you water that you can swim in?
Already happening.
Already happening.
Already happening.
So now you're going to be warm and hot spring.
We're going to be, yes. So our original artesian well is still producing water. And so that still runs and flows. And with this new water, we're going to be adding a bunch of new pools. So we're going to really upgrade the caliber of a property that we're at. And we're going to add lodging and all brand new
So
facilities.
that's a big investment.
It is.
So have you had trouble getting financing?
Nope.
Because you have a history as a land developer?
Yep.
So that pays. You know, so many people are trying to figure out how to get into this industry, and it's hard to get the money.
It's a tough thing. So I've got a lot of experience in that with my history in real estate. So I know pretty easily how to finance it.
Well, good. Well, it was great to meet you, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much.